very happy actually being here. Let me just add one thing. Maybe I forgot it, it might be, or I'm not sure, but I was actually working for 3 years at the Department of Quality Development at Linköping University before I moved. It's quite of a kind of a identity crisis I have actually. I'm a mechanical engineer, and but if I'm among mechanical engineers, they say, well, you just do soft stuff. Well, but important anyway. I came to effective engineering when I was working for Volvo lorries, in the truck corporation, and one of my work there was actually having a look on the gearboxes which came back with complaints, and we could see that many of the gearboxes actually had no error. They were working fine. The problem with these gearboxes was that the gear shifted in a bit heavy maybe, or too loose, or the feeling was not quite right. So I got the task, Simon, do something about it. And at that time, that was just before the millennium shift, so at that time there were no methodologies actually for being able to do that. So we used QFD and a variety of different methods actually to find out what the interval of the maximum force to put in a gear shift gear would be. And that was the start when we realized that the mechanical function or the function of the product is not necessarily the most important thing. It's more important, well, how people experience the product. Are they satisfied with this product? And I went back to Linköping University then, and I got the opportunity to write my PhD on effective engineering. Actually, it's effective engineering, not effective engineering. I had in the beginning, when I sent in a couple of papers, I got the peer review back and say, well, you're spelling wrong, it's effective engineering. No, it's not effective engineering. But it's about how to put in feelings into products. And the theories I'm presenting here today are mostly from Japan. So that is where they actually started. And the term in Japanese would be kansei. Kansei can't be translated. If you translate it, it's something like feeling or emotion, but it's not really what we mean. What we mean, if we have a look on these two, what is it? Pieces of art maybe, or figures, or whatever. One is called Takete, the other one is called Lumumba. Which one is which? Any suggestions, please? You're sitting up polite. I know, you know. I tested it before. Suggestions?
Left one is Takete. Left one is the same.
Yeah? Somebody opposing? No, that's right.
Yeah.
That was easy. Next question would be, why? Yeah, well, then you can explain, well, Takete sounds a little more spiky, or Lumumba is more round in your mouth and so on. But if you're doing product development, you can't tell the guy who's developing the mobile phone, well, I want to have 40% Lumumba. He's saying, well, maybe you should look for another job. So we have to put it into some type of specification. It would be very easy basically to define things according to Lumumba and Takete, or classical or sporty or something else. But which are the properties which make things sporty, which make things classical? And this is what the area of Kansei or effective engineering is about. So we have some type of sensory input. We touch something, we smell something, we eat something, we whatever. And the first thing which is happening in your brain physically is that all the information is filtered through your amygdala, which is a part of your brain stem, which is giving you the feeling. Just, I think, 0.5 seconds after that, this data is getting to your frontal lobe and you have a cognition about it. This is how things work. We're not interested about the cognition because you basically, the customer basically can lie, or you can say, well, the product is very nice, although it's not. We have seen that many times. We have been doing studies on a product which was really bad in quality, but the customers perceived it as very good because there was a nice brand on it. So what we have to do when we use Kansei engineering or effective engineering, we need to give people a stimuli, so test this product, trying not to have the brand involved too much, and then we get the representation of the Kansei and the representation of the Chisei, which is, Chisei is the cognition. By the way, can you give me a 10-minute warning before? So what we do in Kansei engineering is that we have often a Kansei engineering system, computerized system, and we come to that a little bit later, where we put in the psychological feeling, this la mamba, this takete, and out comes some type of design solution. You should have this property in there. If you want to have a sporty car, probably you should have a big engine, but this is not the only one. The big engine makes the car more scary than sporty. There's a lot of combination of properties which you actually have to consider, starting from the proportion of the body to the strength of the springs, of the coil springs in the suspension, for example. So, but you can also return it and say, well, if we have a product which is not on the market, if we have a prototype, for example, and return it to the system, then we get a predicted model, mathematical validated model which is selling, well, probably the customer will perceive it as sporty, they will perceive it as classical, they will perceive it as healthy, or whatever we want to. And this is very important if we are in a company which provides a couple of different products. So you need actually to put in a product in a way that it fits the company image. You can't just have a very healthy product if you are a fast food chain, for example. Might be a problem. So, and this is one of the results from quite a long time of work, 5 years, the results of my PhD. How is it done? I've been in Japan, I've been talking to Japanese researchers, I've been talking to European researchers, and I found out that in many cases that people are doing the same thing, they call the same thing different. And to find the essence, that was my task in my research initially. So how can we do effective evaluations? Well, we first define a domain. Some call it defining the target group, some call it defining the product, and so on. But the domain is a little bit more. We've been working with Electrolux, vacuum cleaners and so on. And what they say that a vacuum cleaner is not a vacuum cleaner. So you have the low standard vacuum cleaner and the very high standard vacuum cleaner. People who are buying the high standard or the expensive vacuum cleaners have very different perception of the machine than those who buy the cheap ones. The cheap ones, they are mostly focused on function. I want to clean my carpet, that's about it. The more expensive machines are more quiet. They are they have to give a feeling of good quality, of effectiveness, and so on. And by the way, they had a problem with one of their high-end machines, which is very expensive, and people said it is very quiet, it's not effective, because the sound or the volume of a machine gives the impression of how effective it is. Remember when you're cleaning, vacuuming at your home, in the hallway, I often have small stones and so on, and then so when you're cleaning, you hear that there is some type of sound, and there's some type of dingling in the pipe and so on. But when you're vacuuming underneath your bed, where you probably have a lot of dust, you hear nothing. If the machine is very quiet, you perceive it as less effective. So this is something you have to understand. This is something you have to understand. What is the domain? What is the buyer? What kind of products do this customer domain buy? And then we describe the domain from two different perspectives. One is the Okay. The semantic perspective. This is what people perceive effectively. How do you experience that? How do you express that? And if you're sitting on a train, or maybe not on an aircraft, but on a train, you can hear people talking about the toothbrush. It's too hard, it's too nice, it's too long, too short. This is how people express their feeling about the product. And this is what we try to filter out and find the essentials. At the same time, we're looking at the... Okay, whatever. We're looking at the product itself and describing the physical space. What are the product properties which gives you a high effective impact? I think a product, if you have a mobile phone or something, you can probably easily identify thousands of different product properties. But not all the product properties makes you to buy this product. There are few product properties which make you buy that, and to find them which have the highest impact on the effective impression of the product. This is what we are trying to do in the second space, the space of aggregation. And then we do something which most methods can't do. This is in the synthesis phase, that we're trying to bring these two spaces together, link a feeling to a combination of product properties. We validate that, and in the end we have mostly a mathematical model, often a regression model, saying that if you want to have a sporty car, or if you want to have a classic mobile phone, or if you want to have, then it should look like that, or these combinations give you the highest effective output. Sorry. The semantic space is nothing new. The semantic space is the space here on the left-hand side is nothing new, but it's really a space. It's a mathematical described vector space. And it's based on Osgood theory on the semantic differential method. From the 1950s, basically. It says that if you collect words, these descriptions about your toothbrush or something, you will find that the object can be described with a couple of different expressions. And these expressions will group together and form a vector space. And this vector space often have 3 or 4 different dimensions. I just put in one for you. This is from our most recent study, which we have been doing with a chocolate manufacturer in Sweden. And here you see we have 4 or 5 different dimensions in here. We collected, I think 200 different semantic descriptions of what people perceive when they eat this chocolate. But when we apply the semantic space methods here, we can see that these are the 5 factors which are the most important. You see, masculinity is very important when you have when you're eating chocolate. Why is that? Well, women, I have to say, what we can see that women often experience bad conscience when they eat chocolate. So men do not have that in the same amount. So that's why masculinity or femininity is one of the dimensions in here. Giving energy is an aspect in here. Healthiness is an aspect in that. We have I want to have one, I like it. Something which might be very similar, but I might find products which people like. At the same thing, I might also find products which people want, but this does not necessarily have to be the same thing. I bought, we don't have a flip chart, sorry. I bought for my kitchen one of these juicers. It's looked like an alien. Do we have a flip chart? No. No, okay. Don't worry. It's probably you have seen it. It's a design juicer. It's formed like it's a ball up there, and then you squeeze the fruit on top, and then it's supposed the juice is supposed to go down and then drop into a bowl underneath. Probably you've seen it. It's very famous juice, but in fact it's not working. That is a product people want to have, but they don't like it. Then you have products which people like. You can go to one of these fast food products, fast food chains. They like Big Mac, of course. But do they want it? Yeah. Well, there might be some type of hesitation in that. So bringing together these two things is important as well. To have this preference, people like it, and they want it. So they want to have a delight on that. So this is what we find out with the semantic space. Space of application is more physical, so we're looking for which are the product properties and how can we group them, which are the product properties which are more or less important to the product. We're looking at the chocolate again, so the color might be something important. Also the texture, so when you're opening chocolate and you touch it, you probably don't want to melt it immediately in your hand, but you would like to melt it in your mouth. So this is a property which gives you very strong affective impact. If it melts in your hand, you just, it's disgusting. If it's not melting in your mouth, on the other hand, you still feel it's disgusting. So it's a combination of those things you have to find, and you spend this in this space. In the synthesis, we use we use a couple of mathematical methods to link together these two spaces. And yeah, well, although these theories look very difficult, we actually have, and I make a jump here, a software which is called Schütte Kansei Engineering software. And this does it for you if you want to. You can access it at kanseiengineering.net. It's free, available. Free version at least. And what it does, it presents you the product, and it presents you the scales. And you have, what's standing here for a minute? I don't know how this works, I'm sorry. Okay. I just would like to have the pointer. So you have here these words from the semantic space. And this is a study which we did for Electrolux on stick mixers. So here you have the word professional, exactly accessible, functional, and so on. And here you have the different... Nothing is working here anymore, sorry. Here you have the different stick mixers which are presented. Can you hear me anyway? Yeah? Working? Which are presented one after one. And in this way, in this way, we get this Kansei engineering system. We get the database, how the different products are perceived, and then we can link them together, and the software is doing it for you if you want to. So this is what we can do. In product development, Kansei engineering can be used on different levels. And I know there are a lot of different product development models around, but I use this Cooper model, which is one of the more famous ones, I would guess. And you can do Kansei engineering on a macro level. So on a whole computer system, or a whole software system, or a whole car, or whatever. But you can also put it into, and have a look more on micro level. So you can have a look on just the steering wheel. You can have a look just on the layout of a homepage, or just the taste of a chocolate. So, and this means that you can use Kansei engineering on different levels through the whole process. And what's very important, I have this dashed line here in the end, where you can see that that you always should use Kansei engineering in the end to verify if your final product is correct if you have met the goals you wanted to achieve. But then there might be some problems, actually. How do you present, how do you perceive products? So if you have a product, which is symbolized here by some type of technical solution, you have different properties: optics, sound, haptics, odor, flavor, all the things. And they are conveyed through some type of effective channel. And in the end, you have your sensory organs where you can see, you can hear, you can touch, and so on, and evaluate the product according to that. But the Kansei is built differently depending on how you present the product and how you interact with the product. So if I just see the product on the video screen or on the TV screen or in the internet, it gives you quite different Kansei than if you would interact with it. So if I go and buy a new TV set, I usually have a look on the internet. I look for all the technical specifications. I narrow down my choice and find, well, there are 2 or 3 TV sets which I really would like to buy. But then I go to the supermarket or to the electronic market and to have a look on, is this really the machine I want to have? And then I go back and buy it on the internet. But okay. Anyway, this is what we mean. There are some of the obstacles. We have something, the proximity of presentation. So how close does the customer have to interact with the product in order to have a good Kansei, to have a good understanding, a good feeling of the product? And then you have the proximity of interaction. How deep is the customer in there? I often have problems with my computer system. So sometimes when we have Windows, for example, there are a lot of functions in there I'm not aware of. So people can ask me, what do you feel about that? I don't know. I never tested them. But if you would force me to use one of these functions, which I never, I would probably have a very different feeling. So when you do effective evaluations, you always have to be sure that the people you are asking, that they are aware of it, you have presented the product properly, you're interested well, and you have the customer is or the participants in the studies have been using the product enough in order to be able to to understand it correctly. This gives you some problem when the product is quite new. Customers have no context. So think about these touchscreen panels. Maybe 5 years ago, I had the first contact with a touchscreen panel. I was working on a project with Volvo, and they say, well, we want to have it in our cars. I say, well, this is touchscreen. So, wow, well, cool. Well, cool, it's nice. I tested it and said, well, I want it. And then after some time, we realized, well, it's not working. You can't work with the touchscreen in the same way as a traditional button. For example, if you're driving, you need to have you have to focus on the street while you actually would change your temperature in the compartment. With the traditional knobs, you just reach out and turn it and you have some type of tactile coding. With this type of touchscreen, you don't have that. So this is something you can't rely on if you have a new product that, yeah, sometimes it can be perceived as very cool, very new, and very desirable, but in fact, the customer has no context. They have never tested it in the real world. So you have to test it in the real world before you actually go out with it. And then you should have a look about what we call honest products. So we had a study with a company doing lawnmowers. And these machines gave a very robust impression when you were in the showroom. They were very heavy material, very, very thick material, and so on. But the users often realized very quickly, well, the engine is very, very weak, and some of the components were not up to that quality that they expected. So what you can do using Kansei engineering or effective engineering, you can make products seem like something which they are not, which is quite dangerous. In a case when you have a product which is very robust, customers did not cut back because they realized the product is not as robust as they expected in the beginning. So what you have to do when you use Kansei engineering, it is you have to apply or you have to enhance the product properties which the product actually has. And here we have something which we call the showroom appeal. So if you, for example, have product properties which can't be evaluated just in the first moment you're sitting in the car, for example. The seats is something what we have been looking at continuously for different manufacturers, that they said, well, if we have the seats very soft, the people will sit in there in the showroom and they will realize, well, it's very nice, I like it. But when they buy the car, they drive it 8 hours, they were, oh, well, okay, I have some problem with my back, it's not good. So in order to prevent that, the seats must be much harder. If they are much harder in the showroom, there will be some discomfort. So you have to communicate that this seat is much harder because of it's much better for you after 6 hours drive. Okay, this is on the theory of Kansei engineering. So now I think I have 3 different examples of products we have been developing through the last years and which are on the market today. I start from a product in Toyota, material handling. It's really hardware, really mechanical engineering, and goes then to more softer products, less tangible products. I have one example from the chocolate industry, and I have one example from Volvo for interior sounds. So in Sweden we have a company which is called BT, and it's acquired by Toyota Handling Equipment. They are the biggest manufacturer of warehouse trucks. You probably have seen those machines somewhere. They are everywhere around. And they came to us, as I said, for the first time when they wanted to have evaluated the driver's feeling. The CEO of that company acquired a BMW, and he said, well, I want to have the same driver's feeling in my truck than in the car. So first we thought that's a joke, but he really meant that. What we could see that this truck was outdated. It was really, really bad design, and they had been doing a big effort in actually improving. Okay. Is that me? Okay.
Better?
Yeah, better. There had been a big effort in actually improving the user-friendliness, ergonomics, and all that stuff. But still they found that the truck was not really up to the standards in the industry. This is a low-aisle truck, and it works in this way that you put the truck in front of some type of stack, and then you can move out the pallet up to 30 meters height. And one thing was that they had some type of tilting cabin in order to reduce strain on the neck. And on the paper, this truck was much more efficient than the other trucks. But the feeling was not the same thing, because the cabin was tilting back and forth with the driver. They experienced the truck as very slow and sluggish. So this is when we came in, and we were doing some type of evaluation. And this is one of the outputs from Kessel. This KW stands for Kansei word. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to show all these Kansei words, but I can show you how we present it. And what you can see is that the orange line, is the individual footprint of the BT truck, the Toyota truck, and then the competitor's truck. What we found out when we had a look on these words, we could see that there was a very high risk for accidents in this truck. They are very, very dangerous. And we could also see that the existing cabin was physically much larger than competitors, but was perceived much smaller. This was a really a real problem, because they thought that they were ahead of the competitors, where they in fact were not. So we had a look on that. We used Kansei Engineering and found out that the accidents were occurring because the safety feeling within the truck was much too high. You feel encased like in, how in a castle. You're driving with a truck which is as heavy as 2 cars, for example, in a quite high speed, and you can't brake like in a car. But people feel, well, I'm protected in that. But in fact, it was not the drivers being squashed. Mostly it was the people in the warehouse around which were injured by the trucks. So this was one thing. The physical, the cabin was larger, as I said, but we found out that in some cases the drivers were actually feeling encased here. They as I said, they were feeling encased very secure in there, which might actually, what was our theory, lead to a smaller perception. It was quite cozy in there. Then we could also see that the leg of the driver was touching the battery compartment here, and you can see there's some type of carpet here in order not to damage your trousers or something or so on. But this was the single property which we found in the truck which gave the perception of being narrow. So this truck is an experimental truck, so we changed the seat a little bit. You see it's a little bit turned out, meaning that when the driver was sitting here, he or she was not touching the battery compartment anymore. And suddenly the truck was perceived as much bigger than the competitors. A very, very small thing. It was 5 minutes work. It was less than €2 investment on actually to change it, but the perception was totally changed. Also, the risk for accidents were much lower, because people said they didn't feel encased anymore. They didn't feel cozy. They didn't feel safe anymore in the same way. So we used that, and together with Pininfarina and our own designers, we redesigned the truck, and we lowered the overall lines. The overall lines then gave a better overview, reducing the feeling of safety, at the same time, keeping them on a level, not feeling unsafe, but reducing the feeling of safety, and at the same time, we could then ensure that the accidents were, if you got this feeling that if I crash into something, I will be affected as well. So that's why the drivers drove slower in many cases. Different colors of plastics and a new design console actually were stressing this perception as well. That was this study. We also did a couple of studies on bottoms, in particular the feeling of if you press a button, how can you be sure that the that the machine is switched on or switched off and so on. But I can give you the paper afterwards. I can't go into all of that, unfortunately. The other study is, I want to present this on Cloetta. This is the leading manufacturer of chocolate in Sweden. I'm not sure if you know that. If you've been in Northern Europe, you'll probably know it. It's bigger than all the others. Sorry that I'm coughing. But they are still very small in the international comparison. So the production methods are, well, had kind of a low standard. So they had the same form, the same interior form for the chocolate products for all the different products they had. These are those, and you can see one of these emotional footprints again. This was a benchmarking on the different packaging they had, and what you can see, the different packaging yielded different profiles here. So you can see all of them look very similar because they are from the same company. If you had another one, bars, for example, they would have very different emotional properties. But although they look very different, they do have some different. Although they look alike, they have some differences in here because they have very different tastes, and people know about that. We were also looking on the interior of the different snacks and did the same thing, and found out that the snacks in there were often perceived differently than the packaging, which is a kind of a problem. Well, if you know the product, not a problem. But if you don't know the product, and if you want to grow on the European market, you can see that people have a certain expectation when they are in the supermarket. I want to buy this product, and this product should fulfill my expectations. I don't know if you, well, probably you know, what's the biggest ice cream manufacturer? They have different. It's Nestlé, I think, but they have different brand names. It's called Magnum in Sweden, at least. You know it, huh? And they have different series in summertime, and they have, in particular, very luxurious ice creams. Magnum is 5 Kisses or something like that, where they have it in a box, a cardboard box. You buy it, and it's a bit more expensive. You open it, and then you get disappointed because it's much smaller than the original Magnum. So this is what I mean. You have an expectation from these products, from the packaging, from the exterior of the product, and what you do is you buy it, and the expectation must be fulfilled or even exceeded. Otherwise, you will never buy the product again, right? And this, in the case of Cloetta, was not the case, because these were not matching these. So we went in and had a look on the different properties. We were using one of these evaluation methods using the case of software, and if we have a look on classics down here, this is for the exterior and this is for the interior. Then we can see that here we have the size, the shape, the color, and the brand as product properties, which we have on the physical side. And we can see that for classics, it should be small, it should have an innovative design, it should be red, and it should have another brand than the Cloetta, which is quite a problem for the company. On the other hand, if we have a look on the interior, then we have some type of descriptions how the surfaces should look like. We had an idea about how they should look like, and we could find that those are the properties which correspond to the term classics. Knowing that, we could then build a product which was actually corresponding, where the exterior and the interior was corresponding to each other. And nowadays we have this product on the market, and I showed it to you here in the beginning. It was this form which was chosen in the end. Okay, the final study. How much time do I have left, by the way?
5 to 7 minutes.
7 minutes, good, okay. That will be feasible. The last study I want to present to you is about a study from Volvo. They approached us, Volvo Car Corporation. Car Corporation is not Volvo anymore. They have the brand, but they were owned by Ford and then sold to a Chinese manufacturer, Geely. And nowadays, they are supposed to sell the cars in China mostly. And this alters a little bit of the design and how the cars are perceived, because Chinese buyers, or the main buyer in the premium segment in China, are not driving the cars on their own. They are usually being driven, so they have an own driver sitting in the back seat. A Volvo car is mostly designed for having a very good design in the cockpit where you're sitting as a driver, but not necessarily in the back. So this had to change a little bit. At the same time, they had to decide what are the effective values of the car, which we want to convey. Why should a Chinese buyer buy a Scandinavian car? What is a Scandinavian car, by the way? and what are the values in the car? And then they had a couple of ideas. They say, well, Swedish heritage should be in there. We should have this Volvo for life. This is their slogan. And inspired by nature. This is what they say. This is Scandinavian design. This is Volvo in a nutshell. But how can you convey that in a car? And then they came up with it. Yeah, well, they are now redoing the whole cockpit design. I told you, they are moving from more manual, what's it called? From knobs to more electronic touchscreen and all that stuff. So what they're doing now, they want to have some type of sound design in there. Just now, what they do now is they buy the different components from different manufacturers, and they have sound. They have warning sounds. They have information sound. They have different type of sounds. But this is up to the individual manufacturer. Now they want to take a holistic approach on the whole sound design. And one of the sounds is actually to have a welcoming sound. What's a welcoming sound? Yeah, well, if you start your computer, if you start your mobile phone, you have a welcoming sound. If you start your Samsung phone, a sound is played which tells you, well, it's a Samsung. If you start your Windows computer, it's this is the Windows sound starting when you start it. The same thing is for Volvo. When we open the car, when we start the car, a sound should be played saying, well, this is a Volvo. And this sound should be recognizable, of course. It should also be on a high level effective. So it should convey these values. And that was not quite easy to do. So what we did first was we choose those three things we got as input from Volvo and translated it into these Kansei words, the semantic space where you can see high quality, solid, and so on. This one, warm, genuine, non-patronizing, refreshing, this corresponds to Swedish heritage. We have Volvo for life, premium, bold, effective. We have inspired by nature, which is connected to powerful, and so on. So these words should be represented by the sound. Then we went to Volvo drivers, actually American Volvo drivers, and asked them, what is Volvo? We presented them the whole list of words, and we told them, well, if we have these words, if you would have to choose 5 of those, which are the words you would choose to describe Volvo? And here you can see Scandinavian, quality, and so on. These are the words which came up here highly. So we went up with the 20 highest ranking percentage, and we went on then to define the physical properties of a sound. This is very difficult. Does sound have physical properties? Yeah, well, they have musical properties in some way. They have something like volume, pitch, BPM, timbre, and so on. Then they have some type of sound effects in there. But it's very difficult actually to find out which of those properties have the highest or higher effective impact on the user's mind. So we had to invent something, and this is something when I said we were working together with another university and Volvo itself to develop a tool for sound sketching. So what is a sketch? Well, sketch is something, if you look at the definition, it's something quick, timely, inexpensive, disposable, something you do very roughly, and it's not a pity if you just throw it in the bin. You can do a new one very quickly, very quick, which is also very difficult to do with the sound. If you're we had musicians in there, they say, well, I need hours to have an idea and so on. So no, we don't have hours, we have minutes, maybe seconds, just to make a sketch. So we came up and say, well, okay, if we would define a couple of properties, which I showed you, and could combine them very roughly, very quickly, in some type of, visual way, then we could very quickly sketch a sound. And here we have such a tool. You have different properties of the sound, and then you have a cross here. You just click on it and move it around somewhere and find out the optimal sound. In this way, you make a sketch of the sound. And I will just give you an idea how that might sound. This is sound number 14. We had over 25 sounds, but they can sound like that. Oop. You heard it? Once again. Or like this. This is the same sound, by the way. Or like that. Just two sounds, two notes after each other. So, using this tool, we developed then 20 different sounds, and here we have the physical, the emotional properties. I see it's very cluttered, but I just want to present it that they are very, very different. And we presented it to the users using Kansei Engineering software. They were listening on the computer screens, and they were then rating them on the words I have just shown you. And then we can see that, well, we get this type of sound. This, for example, is very bad for correct, so probably we can take it away because this is something we don't want. In the end, we had these words which Volvo said, well, these are the most important things. This is what we want to emphasize, helping genuine, high-quality Scandinavian and safe. And the only thing was now just to find a sound which corresponds to those in the highest possible way. So that was done, and we found out 4 sounds. I will play them for you if you would like to. This is sound 4. Do you feel Scandinavian now? Not really, huh? We're a bit low on Scandinavian still. It's a bit better, maybe. This bit different. That was something which was very surprising to us when we had suddenly a sound which was very different from those, but on the paper ranked in the same way, or almost in the same way. So we used that and combined the sound 5 and 7 and made sound 22 from that. And 22 was eventually the sound which was chosen in the end. And this will be the sound which is used, no, it is the sound which is used in the Volvos sold in China nowadays. And it's Scandinavian. You can feel the ice, you can feel the warmth, and you can feel the quality. So just close your eyes and listen to it. Do you feel the ice? Do you hear the heartbeat? So it's a combination of warm and cold at the same time. So something which could be perceived as contradictions can actually be put into the same sound, can be conveyed in this way. And this is what Volvo is for the Chinese market, at least. Then there might be cultural differences in how it can be perceived in Europe or in other countries. Okay, concluding very, very quickly. Sorry?
We don't see it.
Uh-huh. I can see it now. I pressed on fortsetzen. Basta. Okay. These are the areas which we have worked mostly with. Vehicle industry, that was the start of really, when we started really much working on hardware, and then mostly probably also because of my own experience and my own heritage from vehicle industry. But then we have been working with interior design, something like chairs. I was telling you about the showroom appeal. How should the chair be designed? It should be not too hard, not too soft, and to find the optimal compromise between that. We were looking on flooring, laminate flooring in particular, because laminate flooring is something which is perceived to be cheap, to be not the real stuff, not the natural choice. Although it's much more durable than parquet flooring, it does not bleach, it does not wear, you have a guarantee on that. It is even have a higher content of natural wood material in form of wood chips than parquet flooring. Parquet flooring, you will have a very thin layer of wood and then a lot of lacquer because otherwise it wears. So objectively, this laminate flooring is much better than parquet flooring, but still it's not perceived as naturalness. So what is it that people perceive in this way? And to make a very long story very short, it is a tapping sound. If you go into a room, if you hear the sound of the floor or your steps on the floor, you can easily determine it's a laminate flooring or it's a real wood flooring. So what we did, we developed a sound barrier underneath it. It's a rubber layer on it where we underneath it where we can dampen out certain frequencies we don't want to have, in particular these high-pitched frequencies, and we enhance frequencies on the lower band, which correspond to wood flooring. So people cannot just from hearing decide it's a fake flooring. But sometimes if you go downtown to the city center and you have some type of wood flooring, it's not wood flooring. It can't be wood flooring because wood flooring would be worn down in 2 weeks if you have it in a shop somewhere. So this is what you have to use. And recently, as I said, we are working with a couple of food industry. Here we have been doing work with the design of the cups. The cups of this product are very iconic. This is something they don't want to change, but still they want to enhance certain factors, something like healthiness, because the product is very healthy, but because of the colors, it might be perceived as unhealthy, although it isn't. So we have to enhance the impression of healthiness. Another one is this one. It's drinking yogurt. When that came on the market, it's a Scandinavian product. When it came on the market, almost nobody knew what drinking yogurt is. So we had to put in a couple of values in there to give the buyer an idea, what is it? It's a snack and it's healthy. So the design of the bottle is something we have been working with. So if you have this collar bottle shape, it's not very healthy. This straight shape is okay, but if you would have some type of round shape, it would be too much. Something like it's too much calories. So this is the best compromise. Also, well, it's very, very short. Also the design was made here by us finding out that the center of the body is the stomach, where you have all the healthy things in there. Okay, I'm sorry. This is my almost last
Okay.
slide. Thank you very much for having me, and if you're interested in that, and I know I was going through this area very, very swiftly and very, very rapidly, but you can reach me by this mail address or using some of these internet addresses, while the address to the right is the access to Keynote software, which is free on the internet, which you can use if you want to.